How I started a revolution in my entitled family. All I wanted was my sisters. I am currently in custody of my two little sisters, Amy who is 17 and Liza who is 8, not their real names for obvious reasons. I am a 29 male and we live in Australia. I am Potato as that's what Liza calls me. And this is basically the story of how my family felt they were entitled to both of my sisters' bodies, and I wouldn't stand for that. I would like to warn anyone who has faced abuse in the past, as parts of their story may trigger some people. And to anyone who has faced abuse in the past, I do feel deeply sorry for you. The main part of the story takes place about a year ago. I'd moved out 6 years ago at the time and moved to another state for work and study. I was honestly really slack with keeping contact with my family, which is probably why this went on so long. When I do think back to the time before I moved out, I didn't treat Amy the best, and if I hadn't moved out and had so little contact with my family, I may have turned out just as entitled and as much of a horrible person. I came back to visit for my grandparents' birthday. After spending so long away, I spent the morning catching up with aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents of course, and Liza. Now this was actually the first time I'd really realized the oddities of my family. Perhaps it was the change in environment. A few of my roommates had little sisters and whatnot after all, but it was the first time I'd noticed how quiet the little girls of my family were. I guess I'd always just thought of Amy as shy and quiet, but my little cousins were so much the same, polite, shy, quiet and obedient. Though at the time I brushed this off. After a few hours, I realized that Amy was nowhere to be seen all day. The party was at my parents' house, so this confused me, and I slipped inside to see if she was cooped up in her room like a lot of 16-year-olds would be, talking to friends or doing assessments. What I found is a memory that will haunt me forever. My oldest uncle on my father's side, laying over my sister who was quite clearly in a lot of pain and struggling not to cry as he pinned her beneath him. I completely lost it, as any brother would, shouting at him to get off her and out of her room. I scared the hell out of both of them, but in that moment, I was honestly ready to end my uncle. Amy was pretty messed up in the head when I tried consoling her. She was covered in scars, had a rash that I later found out was an allergic reaction. She was allergic to strawberries. She didn't speak and looked at me as if she expected for me to hurt her too. Her room was dimly lit, the blinds taped close to her wall. All the things she'd had when I left were gone, leaving her bedroom feeling cold and empty, and to add insult to injury, she was a month pregnant. When I demanded an explanation from my parents, they, paraphrasing, said that it was my uncle's right, and my father simply pointed out one of my 11-year-old cousins sitting quietly with her parents and told me to have fun. I stormed off back to Amy's room, quietly packed her a bag of necessities and managed to sneak her out of the house and into my car before doing the same with Liza. Part of me wanted to get all my cousins out too, but my main focus was on Amy right now, who sat trembling in the back of my car. I drove them both to the closest police station to report what was happening. I'll skip most of the details of the legal battle that ensued, but my family did not take kindly to being outed for what they were doing. It was a tradition that spanned generations, and there shouldn't be anything wrong with tradition. Amy and Liza were put into temporary foster care. Amy was a wreck. To her, everyone could and would hurt her, and I got reports every few hours that she was having a panic attack. 3 of my uncles went to jail for a very long time. I got a fair bit of money out of a range of family members, full custody of both Amy and Liza, no enforced visitation to their parents. My parents had to pay for any therapy costs, medication and medical needs for both of them. My family was torn in two by this. Many of my aunts leaving their husbands with their children after finally having the courage to follow me. Uncles who had married into the family took their wives, who had also been abused, and cut off ties. I still keep in contact with these members of my family, and I'm grateful for their support and glad that my cousins are safer now. Even some of the older guys who had been brought up thinking it was okay to treat women that way took themselves into counseling once they realized just how messed up it was, and I've had more than one instance where they admitted to hurting Amy and apologized, which I've accepted, as these cousins did their best to take their siblings or other cousins out of harmful environments. Now I do believe some part of the ruling protected the younger men of the family, provided they see some form of mental health professional, as they grew up thinking that this was all normal, so they didn't end up in jail but did end up on some list of possible sex offenders. Not entirely sure there. No one is sure who fathered Amy's child, but she had her pregnancy terminated as we were told her physical and mental health would not cope with carrying a baby she ultimately would unlikely care for. She did consent at the time, and it was brought up by her psychologist once she was doing better, and she confirmed that she would have no love for the baby due to the circumstances in which she fell pregnant. For 6 years, Amy had been physically, sexually, mentally and emotionally abused in every way conceivable. This mostly came from my father's 4 brothers and brother-in-law who married into the family. My parents both stood by and let this happen, offering no support for Amy. During the case, my uncles argued it was their birthright being born into their family, and it was simply Amy's rite of passage before she was married off to one of my uncle's mates at 18. They used her allergy as a form of torture and manipulation. Wanting her to be silent and obedient, they would press strawberries against her skin anytime she said a word and force her to eat them when she stepped too far out of line. A lot of my aunts from my father's side admitted to enduring this treatment, although most of them were lucky and didn't have allergies to exploit. I honestly can't even begin to explain everything that was wrong with Amy because of their behavior. Liza, for the most part, was okay. She needed a little therapy as she was being groomed into compliance and taught that what she would experience was normal, but Amy had completely shut down. It took 2 months before I could even get her speaking. She trusts me now and we often sit down, and I let her talk and open up about whatever she feels comfortable to. Her stories often have me struggling to hold back tears while I comfort her. I did get Amy a service dog a few months ago, tailored towards the emotional support she needs on a regular basis. Lickety Split honestly is the goodest of good doggos. She knows exactly when she's needed and is a massive help when it comes to calming Amy's anxiety, especially in public. We've had more than one encounter with unrelated entitled parents thinking they or their kid deserves her dog more than her. Let me know if you want these stories published too, because I've seen people like to read about service dog related incidents, but anyone who does think that can honestly fight me. No one deserves her dog more than her. On one occasion, one of my aunts, her husband went to jail, tried taking Lickety Split because their money paid for her. I told her if she ever comes near my property again, I would call the police as there was a restraining order against her towards both my sisters. Later she came back and tried to poison Lickety Split with tainted meat, but one of my lovely neighbors caught her and chased her off. Police were called. She is now in jail too after having to pay a fine and some money to me because at this point, I'm pretty well acquainted with the legal system and have sued her. My family still tried to get my sisters out of my care, reporting me for everything from animal abuse to drug trafficking. They planted drugs in an identical stuffed toy to Amy's comfort toy and left it in the yard, but Amy would never do that, so I knew something was up immediately. Home security systems work wonders. I've actually become pretty chummy with the local police officers who have to inspect their claims, but they know I'd never do anything to endanger my custody over the girls. They mean the world to me. I will admit though, I have done things to hurt me bond with them, yelling when stressed and throwing things from time to time, but I'm not perfect, and Amy has told me that although these moments do scare her, she doesn't feel endangered being near me when they happen. I also spoil them a little when they do happen. Now the reason this ended on AITA is because a few weeks ago my mother contacted me saying she wanted to talk. I was hesitant, but agreed, and we met up in the next town over. No way I could be followed home. My mother explained how she was in the process of divorcing my father and she wanted to have a relationship with me and my sisters, with emphasis on mending her bond with Amy, who had not called her mom in years. She explained how she was pressured into marriage after she got pregnant with me and never wanted that life for her daughters. I flat out told her no, something several members of my family disagreed with, as she could have done literally anything to support Amy emotionally with what was happened, done anything to make her feel better or more secure with what was happening to her, but instead she was shunned and isolated except for when she was needed to cook, clean, or provide some sort of service to the family, even going as far as to berate her whenever she did try to confide in my mom that she was in pain or scared. Amy was well past her breaking point when I took her and had even planned on killing herself less than a week after my visit. My mother argued that she had the same right as the other members of my family who had left and had contact with my sisters, but I told her it was because they were doing it to protect their children and themselves. They didn't wait a year after losing custody to try and fight for them, and I really don't even need to give a reason. I have custody and she does not. Members of AITA convinced me that when Amy is in a better place mentally and Liza is older, I bring it up with them, leave the decision in their hands. I've been told Amy will be a dependent well after she turns 18. Her mind just doesn't function properly, so there is no risk of her mother getting into contact behind my back even when she's an adult, and while Amy does have a phone and a computer, she doesn't have any social media as she doesn't want any chance of her family trying to contact her, as they've threatened her with many forms of torture in the past. This story doesn't have a slam dunk ending. I have my sisters and they're in a safe environment where they'll get to grow up as kids. Amy is getting the help she needs and is slowly making her way out of the tower she built to protect herself in the only way she could. But she knows there isn't a rush to come out. I'll work with her at the pace she sets. She's still discovering her own interests, but quite like just reading a book with a form of fruity tea. She also has a small collection of stuffed animals, mostly Build-A-Bear, that she adores and takes one with her everywhere. She's sensitive to texture, so the feeling is a comfort for her, and once a week we sit down to try to find older bears she likes. We only have 3 Build-A-Bears on her wish list, and honestly, I've loved helping Amy discover herself. She lost a lot of her ability to think and feel for herself during this time, and watching her find her favorite book genre or her favorite types of music is a great feeling, knowing how far she's come, and I live for the days she actually manages a smile. I'd be willing to answer most questions, so if you want to know anything, just ask, as I want to bring awareness that these things are still happening to other kids, but obviously some things I'd rather keep to myself for the girls' sake. Edit. First off, thanks for the awards, it means a lot, and thank you for everyone offering your kind words and support. It's honestly really difficult this past year and at times I really struggle but have to stay strong having my 2 little girls depend on me so much and the support they have shown is truly the best. Some extra notes: Amy was pulled out of school at 10, a few months after I left home. She was kept isolated in her room and had very little meaningful contact. Also, I'm not going to share a photo of Lickety Split as she is a very recognizable dog and not everyone who has contact with Amy and her dog know the full story, so I'd rather not draw on links between the story and her real day-to-day life as she struggles with it enough. Edit. Wow, this blew up overnight. Thank you for all the awards and sorry if I don't get back to some people. Also, I'm meeting back up with my mother later to talk to her about the possibility of seeing the girls in the future, once Amy is a lot more stable and Liza is old enough to understand what I saved her from, and the decision will be entirely theirs. Edit. Answering the commonly asked questions to save myself repeating. Yes, I was groomed to, but much differently. I was taught I could treat the woman in my family how I wanted, but I was never really a violent person and sexually driven. I was a jerk, and although I have anger issues at times, taking it out on other people is not something I ever saw effective. My focuses were more on my studying. Some of the other men in my family were the same and were never really abusive. Unfortunately, it never really clicked in my head that if I was being taught that, what were they teaching my sisters behind my back? I blame myself for falling because of how long Amy suffered and do my best to make amends for it by showing her love no one else cared to do. I am in therapy too. I work closely with Amy's therapist too, so don't worry about my mental well-being. I'm looking after myself too. And for those mentioning BS because I didn't go into detail about all the legal details, I would go days on just a few hours of sleep during the whole legal battle because I would be looking into every detail I could to know how to help my sisters. Most of it is a messy blur. I also didn't feel many people would care to listen, and I had to chop loads out of my story and still had people saying it was too long. The story is unbelievable, I get that, I wouldn't want to believe it either. You don't need to say it though, just downvote and move along. I don't care what you choose to believe. Amy was pulled out under the premise that she was being homeschooled. I'm not sure how it worked from there. I was never homeschooled and I didn't homeschool the girls. I'm not sure how my family got around DOCs or anything like that, I just know it worked for 6 years. Update. This incident happened a few months ago. For context to those who haven't read my previous posts, my sister, Amy 17, was physically and SA'd by my family. I took custody of both her and my other sister, Liza, 8, who was being groomed into thinking that behavior would be normal when it started for her. Liza is fine now and adjusted to living with me properly, while Amy has a long list of physical and mental impairments that affect her daily. Because of this, I got her a service dog, a German Shepherd crossbred named Lickety Split. She has a funny shaped mark that looks like an ice cream cone on her head, and her trainers named her after one of the really old My Little Ponies. Now, Amy adores her dog. We did a few months' work with the trainer to get Lickety Split tailored towards Amy's needs, such as strangers needed to respect Amy's personal space bubble. Something I hear from people is how they struggle not to pay service dogs because they need to let them know they're a good dog, but trust me, their people let them know. Lickety gets groomed daily by Amy and they never go out without a pocket full of treats. I have 3 different stories of entitled parents and kids thinking they deserve Amy's dog more than her, and to save this from being one super long post, I'm going to share them separately. The first happened less than a month after we got Lickety Split. We were down at a local park that allowed off-lead dogs, letting our dog have a run around, and she didn't have her vest on as this was playtime for her, but I had it with me just in case she needed to go into service mode for my sister, which wasn't uncommon. I make an effort to get down to the park with Amy and Liza daily because otherwise Amy would just hide away in her blankets any chance she got, and it was good to be out in public and getting the fresh air. We were playing fetch with Lickety Split, taking turns throwing the ball for our happy doggo. Amy starts getting a bit antsy about an hour into our normally 2-hour-long walk, which happens, there isn't always a reason. She just gets fidgety and spooks easily, and I've learned to recognize when she's distressed ages ago. So we called Lickety Split back and I help her into her vest, as when she's not wearing it, kids often come up to pat and join in the play, but when Amy gets anxious it's better to have Lickety Split have her attention on Amy. A young child, maybe 9-ish, she was definitely older than Liza, comes up with her mom, who had one of those obviously fake smiles on her face. She didn't have the typical "can I speak to the manager" haircut, but one of those "I feel like I'm better than you and will make sure you know it" like haircuts. She will be our Karen and her daughter will be dubbed Little Susie. Karen, why did you stop playing? Susie here was enjoying watching you play with your dog. She was actually just asking me to let her play with it and I said yes, so would you mind giving her the ball? Me with a friendly smile, "I'm sorry miss, our dog is an emotional support dog and she needs to look after my sister right now. I'm not sure why you said your child could play with her dog. I most certainly wouldn't tell my girls it was okay for them to play with things." As I explain this, I move to stand between her and Amy, who is sitting on the ground with her attention on her dog and trying to ground herself. I am very protective over both my sisters, so I leave no room for her to get near Amy, who is now on the ground, breathing heavily while Lickety Split does her job while telling Liza to sit with her big sister and help her if she needs, as sometimes Amy needs help to calm down. Karen, that's not a real thing. Your sister isn't blind, she doesn't need a dog working for her. If you're going to be lazy, at least let my child play with the mud. Me guide dogs aren't the only type of service dog, miss. My sister had her dog to help with her anxiety and other mental health issues. She has her vest on now, so disturbing our dog is illegal as she needs to have her attention on my sister. Karen, dogs shouldn't be made to work for people. It's wrong that you've enslaved that poor animal. Me, miss, our dog isn't enslaved. She's simply been taught how to recognize when my sister needs help or needs to calm down, even though I went through courses to help me learn how to best cater to my sister. Our dog is treated as an extension of the family and enjoys helping my sister. Now we need to get home so I can get my sister's dinner. As I turn to my sisters, I see Susie trying to grab at Lickety Split's tail. Liza simply plops herself down at her rear with her back to little Susie and begins patting her sister's dog's back. Deciding I'd had enough and there was no way Amy was going to calm down here, I start to pack up the girls to take them home despite it being an hour earlier than normal. I turn around and help Amy off the ground. She's in tears and shaking at this point and won't let go of Lickety Split, who is in her alert mode due to my sister's mood. Liza complains about having to go home early as I clip on Lickety Split's lead and hold Amy close, letting her hold onto part of the lead while I hold the handle out of caution. Read too many stories on Reddit. As we start to walk off, little Susie leaps forward and tackles our dog. Amy screams and crouches on the ground with her hands over her head in a frantic panic while I push the kid away. Lickety Split, who is limping and whining but still goes straight for Amy and stands over her. By now she is quite angry and growling at Karen and Susie for scaring her person and hurting her. The child is crying at how I pushed her off the doggy she really wants, and all she wanted was a ride on her back. Note, this kid was almost twice the size of Lickety Split. Karen then comes up to me practically foaming at the mouth. Karen, hand over that mutt right now or I am reporting you for raping my child. Me, miss, my sisters are in my care because they were abused by their family. Report me for doing anything that could result in me losing them and I will sue you for slander. Now, your child hurt my sister's dog, so we're going to the vet. May I have your details so I can send you the vet bill? As I say this, I point to the nearby toilet block with a security camera on the side. I'm sure the whole thing is on tape. Karen, a look of dumbfound anger over her features, reluctantly gives me her number before she takes her child and dashes, but I make sure to also write down the plate number of her car before calling the police, just in case she does make the SA claim. I am very cautious when it comes down to the custody of my siblings, as I don't trust most of my family with them, and losing custody over them would kill me. We take Lickety Split to the vet and she only minor sprains to her hind legs and back. I made sure to send the details of the vet bill to Karen, and surprise surprise, she refused to pay until I threatened to take her to court, as Lickety Split and all her training were not cheap. Typically here in Australia they can cost anywhere from $15,000 $50,000, and while I won't say exactly how much she cost, it was on the latter end of the spectrum and she is worth every penny. After a little back and forth she reluctantly pays before contacting me 3 days later saying she is going to sue me for the money back, to which I simply tell her I'll see her in court. It's been about 7 months now and nothing. I've never understood how people can think they're entitled to other people's pets. While I didn't mind buying Lickety Split for Amy, she was a lot more expensive than regular dogs, and this Karen didn't even believe she was specially trained. Our dog is doing fine now and it's a massive load off me having her, as I don't feel the need to hover over Amy to make sure she's okay, but please remember never to disturb a service dog. Their attention needs to be on their person. My other story for context. So, this is the second of my 3 encounters with entitled parents that relate to my little sister's service dog. Sorry it took so long to get out. More issues with my mom have risen lately and I am a single potato caring for 2 needy tater tots. I do have 2 other stories. The first that explains how I came into custody of my beautiful little sisters after my parents were allowing the elder of 2 to buy physically, mentally and SA'd for 6 years, and the other a brief encounter with an entitled parents who didn't believe my sister needs a service dog because she has mental illnesses. I'll link them at the bottom for convenience. I'm also far from the best storyteller as well as writing in general, so bear with me, it's also long. I'll be using the same false names for my sisters that I've used for all my other stories. Amy, who is 17, and Liza, who is 8. I'm their older brother and I'm 29, and this all takes place in Australia. Now, as briefly mentioned in my other EM story, I do my best to get Amy outside for at least an hour a day, and this normally involves taking her service dog for a leisure walk as a family, which she enjoys and is accustomed to at this point. On this particular day a new playground had just opened up nearby, so I thought it might be fun to take my girls somewhere different, and as Amy likes to play fetch with Lickety Split, her service dog, whom is a cross between a purebred German Shepherd and a mutt, mixture of several different breeds, this one specifically bred with calmer, easy to train temperaments, I made sure to look into the rules regarding off-lead dogs. As a service dog, she's allowed pretty much everywhere if she has a lead and vest on and isn't disturbing the peace. There was a nearby field where off-lead dogs were permitted, but the area around the playground only allows on-lead dogs, which is normal for my area. So, armed with doggy dodo bags, sunscreen, water and lickety-split's vest and lead, we drive down to the new park. New areas do make Amy anxious, so we walk around a bit to help her get an understanding of where everything is, and during this time, Lickety-Split has her vest and lead on, dutifully walking at Amy's pace like the best doggo she is. As there are quite a few little kids around and we don't want them distracting her, but most seem to understand what Lickety-Split's vest means. However, one kid in particular, whom we'll dub Leg, little entitled girl, does approach and asks to play with Lickety-Split. Amy has selective mutism, she can't talk in most situations. I take the duty to explain that Lickety-Split is working right now and can't be distracted, but I point to the field and say we might be playing there later if Amy feels up to it. She normally doesn't mind other people throwing the ball as long as they don't actually touch Lickety-Split or her. Leg huffs and says that dogs are for playing, not working. I ask her if she's ever seen police dogs on TV or anything, to which she hesitantly replies yes, and I explain those are a different type of working dog. Lickety-Split's job is to take care of my sister because she gets frightened very easy and her dog makes sure she doesn't get hurt if she gets scared. The Leg then turns to Amy, who is getting a bit fidgety and keeps tugging on my shirt, her silent signal that she wants to move away from this, while Lickety-Split is in her alert stance, when she has a feeling something around could trigger Amy or cause her harm. The Leg then throws her arms up and shouts boo, which of course causes her to jump and hide behind me, starting to cry. Amy, even to this day, is very timid and doesn't cope well in strange environments with loud noises and sudden movements towards her. The Leg starts laughing and calls Amy retarded. Liza, who is very protective of her big sister, then pushes the girl and scolds her for being mean, and I decide that we've all had enough of this girl and hurry my sisters along so we can find somewhere for Amy to calm down in peace. We find an area out of sight from the Leg and I sit Amy down on a bench in the shade where I can work towards calming her down before deciding if we should just go home. Thankfully she wasn't too bad as far as her anxiety attacks go, just breathing heavily, hot, and she was crying quietly. I asked her if she wanted to go home, but she declined and asked we just stay away from Leg because Liza still wanted to play in the playground and said she didn't want Lickety-Split off her lead. I'm hesitant but agree, knowing that because Amy is trying to overcome her anxiety, she does sometimes want to push herself out of her comfort zone, and I would just have to keep a close eye on her and make sure she isn't pushing herself too far. The next little while is quiet, Liza playing in the playground while Amy and I sit in the shade with Lickety-Split laying beneath the bench and Amy reading a book. As you'd expect, more kids came to ask to give pats to our dog, but I politely turned them away with no issues. No Leg, or so I thought. Leg comes running up to Amy and me with her mother in tow, jabbing her finger at me while blabbering about animal abuse. Now, most of my attention was on my sister rather than what this lady was saying, so the conversation isn't exactly word for word. This also took place months ago. The mother looks me up and down as if I had no business being in the area. My suburb is the next one over and considered slightly higher class, as asks if Lickety-Split is my dog. I explain how Lickety-Split is in my name, but she is registered as Amy's service dog. In Australia, if you are under 18, parents or guardians are considered the owner of dogs even if a registered service dog is serving a minor when she turns 18. Lickety-Split's ownership will be transferred to Amy. The parent gave me a look as if hit her child. She then snarls at me something along the lines of how dare you make an innocent animal work and brainwash it into being able to do nothing more than follow your demand. I just shrug and tell her that she's entitled to that opinion and ask her to leave as she was upsetting Amy. She then demands I hand the dog over to her, as a dog as spectacular looking as mine should not be forced into slavery. I give a simple nope and wave her off. She leaves, surprisingly, with her daughter complaining about how she wants a dog that is well behaved enough to sit like Lickety-Split is. About half an hour passes and we were packing up to leave. Amy quietly asks if we can throw the ball just a little for Lickety-Split because she doesn't feel it's fair for her dog to miss out on the fun, so we head back to the field, remove Lickety-Split's lead and vest after checking Leg or her mother weren't around. Side note, her dog tags also say that she is a service dog, as well as have my name, address and phone number on them, and this will be important later. And we begin a small session of fetch with Lickety-Split, taking turns throwing the ball as we usually do. Now the park is set up, so the field is right next to the car park with a row of bushes separating the two. In the area we were standing and had a few trees shading some picnic tables. As Liza is taking her turn to throw the ball, it hits a tree and bounces through the bushes. Lickety chases after it and I tell my sisters to stay put while I follow just to make sure she doesn't end up on the road. Despite Liza's throw not being too hard, Lickety-Split wasn't directly behind the bushes like I thought she'd be. In fact, I couldn't immediately find her after passing the bushes. I looked around for a moment before hearing Lickety-Split's distressed barking and bolt into the car park. Finding a family of 5 attempting to wrestle lickety-split into the back of their car, the family including Leg, her mother, father, a boy, most likely middle child, and an older girl, appeared to be the oldest. The father was holding lickety-split's jaw shut while the children were attempting to move her into the trunk of the car. My dog was not making easy for them, and since the mother seemed to refuse to get close and the father was fighting to keep her head under control, they were struggling quite a bit. I yelled at them to let lickety-split go and several things happened in quick succession. The F lost his grip on lickety-split's head while the 2 girls jumped back, leaving B holding her hind legs off the ground. Lickety-split barked several times before the F again tried to hold her muzzle, which she responded to by biting his arm and flinging herself at the boy, snapping at him until she managed to land a bite on his ankle and bolt to my side. I grabbed her collar and yelled several obscenities at the family for attempting to steal my dog. At this time, a security man arrived, explaining how someone had reported an incident and asking what was going on. At this time, Amy and Liza had also come looking for me, most likely hearing the barking and yelling as well as just wondering why I was taking so long. Amy was on the brink of a panic attack and Lickety strained against my grip to get to Amy, so I let her go, telling Amy and Liza to quickly put her vest and lead back on. The father is now yelling at the SM at how they found what they had assumed was an abandoned dog that they were planning on taking to a shelter to adopt the poor thing when I appeared and beat the dog until she was so scared it bit him and his son, and he now demanded the dog be put down immediately. The SM looks over the lickety-split, who was taking a defensive stance in front of my sisters and snarling at the family before looking at me and asking what my side of what happened was. Thinking this could take a while, I ask him to hold on a moment while I move my sisters and lickety-split off the road and into the shade. Amy is having a panic attack at the prospect of her dog being put down and sobbing for me to protect her dog. At this point, I just wanted to get her home where it was much easier calming her down, so I turned back to the SM and the family and explained the misthrown ball, how I'd come to make sure my dog didn't end up on the road, and how I found the family attempting to steal my sister's service dog when the EM interrupted, screeching how that's proof he abuses the dog, no dog should be made to work. The SM then pauses before he states his grandma has a guide dog because she's going blind. Pause from the family. SM turns to the kids and asks if they were trying to move the dog in the car. The older girl confirms this. SM then asks if they waited to see if anyone claimed the dog. The girl shook her head and the EM then claimed the dog had no tags. I point out lickety-split's beautiful handmade, bright purple and blue collar, stating it has my phone number and address on it before asking SM if I could take my sisters home. I didn't even care about pressing charges for the attempted dog napping. I just wanted to get Amy home as she was really struggling to calm down. Thankfully SM understood, took my details and explained this would most likely go to the police as my dog had bitten 2 people. I wasn't too worried about this as my state's law says that if a dog bites or attacks someone it would be put down unless it was provoked to do so. He would make sure to save all security footage as evidence, as he could clearly see I cared for my dog and family. He let me go but warned me that lickety-split must be kept in my name and her residence can't change or it would have worse legal repercussions. I assured him we weren't going anywhere before ushering my sisters to my car to get home. I left the car park and drove to another at a sports field close by before trying to calm Amy down, going through our normal method of grounding her before giving cuddles, and talking her down from her panic attack. She's still shaky when I pulled away, but I wanted to get her home where she could lie down and relax, so she just cuddled the toy she had brought and her dog the whole way home while crying softly. Amy normally sits in the back seat with lickety-split and Liza no matter where we are going. We ended up ordering from a restaurant, Amy's favorite, for dinner and watching a movie together snuggled up on the pull-out lounge. The girls both fell asleep there and I let them be. This was before Amy was back in school, but I gave the next off from her tutoring and worked from home since she was still upset. The police did get in contact with me about lickety-split biting 2 people but confirmed they had seen the security footage and agreed that the situation had provoked lickety-split to do so. There was also a whole court procedure where the family was adamant the attack was unprovoked and they were just trying to help what the thought was a stray dog, but one of the cameras had caught a very clear display of lickety-split collar, which has my phone number. Not to mention, EM and Leg had seen me and my sister twice that day, which cameras had also caught. The parents were fined and given community service, and since I just wanted it to be over, I didn't press further, but we haven't been back to that park since. Update. Hey Redditors, sorry the wait was so long. I've been having issues with my mum over the girls and just been generally busy lately, so this may be a little rushed. It did affect Amy for a few days, but after plenty of assurance her dog would be fine. She calmed down over it, but she is very selective over who touches lickety-split now. I've had a lot of people asking for ways they can help, offering to send things and so much more. I'd like to say while the offer of sending things is a sweet one, Amy is extremely fussy when it comes to her toys, the ones she plays with, and even about what stays in her room as she gets scared of random things. A lot of what she does get in gifts off other people is money and gift cards, as she likes picking things out herself. I am in no way asking for these things. We are also very well off at this point. A mate helped me get a job in the field I was studying in, that at the time I was in no way qualified for, but kudos to him. And it pays more than enough to support my little family couple, that with therapy costs covered by our parents as well as the support payments they have to pay means we all live comfortably. If you feel like doing something nice or supportive for us, donate towards a charity that helps prevent child abuse, support groups for victims or anything like that, because while we are fine but a lot of children aren't and are in need of safe places to live, and putting money towards these causes is the best way to do something nice for us. Update. First off, we're all doing great. Amy's therapy has been going well and she's becoming more comfortable in social settings. She still has selective mutism, but it's been improving. She's now officially a completely healthy kid in physical terms, having completed the last of her medical procedures and physio at the end of January, as she had a lot of issues with her bones initially as well as being malnourished, but that's all fixed now. She's showing a lot more emotion and actively seeks out and shows affection towards those she trusts, and has far fewer nightmares than she did a few months ago. Amy still needs regular therapy, but her therapist has been praising her progress. Her school work has also been going well. I've had a few people ask how Amy keeps up, and to put it simply, she doesn't. Amy's main focus at school is to learn to socialize. There is no pressure for her to keep up grades or do well in tests. That stuff can be worked on later, and even her teachers give her easier work despite already being 2 years below her age-appropriate year. Liza is doing well in school too. She seems to have taken after me since she is very smart and near to the top of her grade. I'm very proud. Since my last update here, I've sat down with her and gone a bit more into detail what was happening when she was with her parents, as she started requesting to see them again, and if it were up to me, that would never ever happen. It's her right to make a choice once she's old enough. I'll slowly tell her more about what was happening, and not until she has the whole story will I let her choose if she wants to have supervised visits with her parents. I've finished my study for my field of work and got promoted pretty quickly once qualified, which allows me to work at home more often and be able to spend more time with my girls. For those who ask, yes, I do call them my girls. Why wouldn't I? I've also fixed a lot of my anger issues, and it's been quite a while since my last outburst. Some people I saw were concerned about that. We've also moved towards the end of September, and since we've had no negative confrontations with entitled parents, the girls still go to the same school, and our new house has a bigger backyard which lickety-split loves. She's doing very well too. That's about all the important information I can think of right now. Happy to answer more questions in the comments. Thank you everyone for the support, and I'll hopefully get around to the last story of entitled parents being entitled over lickety-split soon.